Number 1. The Cardiff Giant. October 1869. Two men are digging a well behind a barn in Cardiff, New York when their shovels hit stone 3 feet down. They clear the dirt and find a foot. A human foot carved in stone attached to a body. A man 10 feet tall, lying on his back in the earth like he'd fallen asleep and turned to rock. Within days, the farmer has a tent over the hole and is charging 50 cents a look. People come by the thousands, by train and by wagon. Preachers call it proof of the Bible's giants. Scholars come to argue. The crowds only grow, and the whole thing was a hoax, planned more than a year in advance. Behind it was a New York tobacconist named George Hull, an atheist by his own account, sick of arguing with people who took the Bible's giants literally. So he gave them one. He bought a block of gypsum, a soft pale stone, had it carved in Chicago, aged it with acid, and jabbed it all over with darning needles to fake the pores of human skin. Then he had it buried on his cousin's farm, to be discovered on cue. The well digging was the reveal. Then it gets stranger. The showman P.T. Barnum tried to buy the giant, got refused, so he built his own copy and showed that as the real one. A fake of a fake. You know the line, there's a sucker born every minute. It's almost always pinned on Barnum, but he probably never said it. It was more likely said by the man who owned the original giant, complaining about the crowds paying to see Barnum's counterfeit instead. A fake quote on a fake giant. Somehow it fits. So how do you read it? 3 ways. As fraud, it barely held. The Yale paleontologist Othniel Marsh took one look and called it a humbug of recent origin. As culture, it landed in an America at war with itself over science and scripture, and slotted neatly into a fight people already cared about. And as business, Barnum proved the ugliest lesson of all. You can make more money from the copy than the original, because the appetite outlives the truth. The science closed the case immediately. The crowds kept coming anyway. From the impossibly large, we shrink to something you could hold in 2 hands. And far uglier. Number 2, the Feejee Mermaid. Look at the thing itself, about 3 feet long. The top half is a shrunken monkey, arms clawed, mouth frozen open in a snarl. The bottom half is a dried fishtail. The two are joined so cleanly that in low light you can't find the seam. Dark, leathery, deeply unpleasant to look at. And in 1842, it was one of the most famous objects in America. It belonged in spirit to P.T. Barnum, the same Barnum building fake giants. He leased it from a Boston museum man, and he understood the one thing that made it work: the gap, because the posters never showed this snarling little horror. They showed a beautiful woman, long hair, bare shoulders, a graceful tail curling through the waves, the mermaid of a sailor's dream. People paid expecting her. They got the thing in the case. To sell it, Barnum invented an expert out of thin air, a learned doctor who lectured audiences on the creature's authenticity. The doctor was a fiction too, one of Barnum's own men playing a part, a fake scientist vouching for a fake animal sold by a fake picture. As for what it actually was, most historians think it was crafted in the Far East, very likely Japan, where joining monkey to fish into a mermaid was a known craft, then carried west and sold as a wonder. 3 readings. As an object, it's simple taxidermy fraud, a monkey, a fish, a needle. As a product, Barnum was never selling the thing at all. He was selling anticipation, the walk to the glass, the story you'd tell after. And the most modern reading is the most uncomfortable. The lie wasn't in the object. The lie was in the marketing. The poster sold the dream, the case sold the letdown, and people paid happily for both. We've been doing it ever since. The original is believed to have burned in one of the fires that later swept Barnum's collections. So the most famous fake of its age survives only as posters, and the memory of a crowd that paid to be fooled. That one fooled the merely curious. Number 3, the Cottingley Fairies. Picture 2 girls at the bottom of an English garden in 1917. Elsie Wright, 16, her cousin Frances Griffiths, 9. They keep coming home with wet feet, and their excuse, the excuse that starts all of this, is that they've been down by the stream, playing with the fairies. To prove it, they borrow a camera, and they come back with a photo of Frances, chin on her hand, 4 tiny winged fairies dancing in the air right in front of her face. They weren't master forgers. They were children with a clever idea. The fairies were paper cutouts copied from the illustrations in a popular children's book and propped up in the grass with hat pins. To an adult eye today, the flatness is almost obvious, But it didn't stay in the garden. The photos reached people interested in spiritualism, and then the most famous believer of all, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes, fiction's great engine of cold logic, looked at snapshots of paper fairies and decided they were real. In 1920, he published them, championed them, defended them in print. Sit with that. The man who built the most rational detective in all of literature staked his public name on fairies at the bottom of a Yorkshire garden. And the twist is how long it held. The girls didn't confess for a year or a decade. For more than 60 years, they let it stand. They were old women in the 1980s before they finally admitted the photos were faked with cutouts. 3 readings. The mechanics are trivial. Paper, pins, a borrowed camera. The wound underneath is not. 1917 was the middle of the First World War. A generation being fed into the trenches, a grieving country desperate for a world that still had magic in it. The hunger did the believing, and the loose thread is the one the girls left themselves, because even in old age, Frances insisted the last photo was genuine, that something really had been there for that final frame. Almost certainly, that's just an old woman keeping a piece of her childhood. Almost certainly. But she never took it back. From a machine that recorded a lie, we turn to a machine that was the lie, beating grandmasters at chess 2 centuries before the device in your pocket could. Number 4, the mechanical Turk. Long before there was an app that seemed to think, there was a wooden box that seemed to think, and it was winning. In 1770, an inventor named Wolfgang von Kempelen unveiled a machine at the Austrian court, a large cabinet, with a carved figure seated behind it in robes and a turban, which is where the name comes from. In front of the figure, a chessboard, and the machine would play. Not badly. It would play a full game against a living person, and more often than not, beat them. Before each match, von Kempelen would open the cabinet doors one by one to show the inside, a dense forest of cogs and brass, no room for a person. Then he'd close it, and the figure's wooden arm would reach out and move a piece. This thing toured Europe and America for the better part of a lifetime. It's said to have beaten Napoleon. It's said to have faced Benjamin Franklin, a thinking machine in the 1700s. It was a fraud, of course. Folded inside the cabinet behind the gears on a sliding seat was a living human chess master, an expert player working the arm and reading the board from inside. As each door opened, the operator slid to the section still closed. The forest of gears was half prop. The genius was a person, crammed into a box. Not everyone fell for it. A young writer named Edgar Allan Poe reasoned his way through it in an essay, arguing, correctly, that there simply had to be a human inside. 3 readings. Mechanically, it's settled. Clever cabinetry. A hidden human. Sliding panels. The reason it lasted is that we wanted to believe a machine could think. The desire ran ahead of the evidence, exactly as it does today. And the sharpest reading is the inversion. The Turk was a human pretending to be a machine, while our modern fear is machines pretending to be human. Number 5, or Piltdown Man. 1912. An amateur archaeologist named Charles Dawson announces a find from a gravel pit at Piltdown in southern England. Working with Arthur Smith Woodward of the Natural History Museum, he presents skull fragments that are exactly what everyone's been hoping for: the missing link, the big brain of a human, the heavy jaw of an ape, the point where mankind began. And it landed in England. Not Africa, not Asia, England. For British science in the age of empire, it was almost too good to be true. It was exactly too good to be true. The fossil was an assembly, a fairly modern human skull joined to the jaw of an orangutan, the ape teeth filed down by hand to fake human wear. The whole thing stained brown so the mismatched bones looked old and looked like they belonged together. It held for more than 40 years. It sat in textbooks. Generations learned it as fact. Then, in 1953, a small team, among them Kenneth Oakley and Joseph Weiner, used fluorine dating. The principle is simple. Bones in the ground slowly soak up fluorine from the soil, so older bones hold more. The skull and the jaw had wildly different levels. They hadn't been buried together. They weren't the same age. They were never the same creature. Piltdown fell apart in an afternoon of chemistry.